it's probably doesn't even do this justice to say that we're really sad today because of news that we received about Consolidated Biscuit. As you know, CBC, who, as we've come to know them, was to begin a baking operation here in Tecumseh, create 500 jobs, and add $12 million worth of new investment. Unfortunately, the project now has taken a turn that I don't think anybody here, including everybody in City Council, could have ever predicted would happen. Jim Appold, the current president of CBC, announced to his employees earlier today that he is selling the company to a private equity firm named Windpoint Investment out of Illinois, Windpoint Partners out of Illinois. We expect that transaction to take place later on in the next week or two. But the announcement was made at CBC earlier today. However, as part of this transaction, it's important to understand that the Tecumseh building is not part of that sale. So Tecumseh Bakery LLC, who presently is a division of CBC, will continue to own the building. Jim Appold will continue to hold title to that building. What we don't know is how this building will be used in the future. We're fairly confident that it will not be used for baking of cookies, though. That's the very unfortunate news. We're working very closely with Mr. Appold because he obviously will hold title to this building, and his team to come up with a new plan to reuse that facility and obviously create jobs and new investment. We want everybody to know that as hard as I think we all worked, and there's a lot of players involved in this project, but as hard as that was, I think we're all prepared to work even harder to make something good happen with that building, and we're confident that something will. I guess we ask everybody to remain hopeful and to be patient while we work through things. We fully anticipate that we'll receive the same cooperation that we have had from the MEDC, the LEDC, South Central Michigan Works, the EPA, the DEQ, and on and on and on.
Alphabet soup.
Alphabet soup, absolutely. You know, as you think about things, and as we've thought about this, we've tried to think about, okay, what kind of questions are going to come to mind. And a lot of them we don't have answers for today, but a few that I think are probably the most that would come up initially, and we do have answers for, is how does this affect Tecumseh Products? Tecumseh Products sold the building in December 2009, so we do not have, we have no reason to believe that there's any impact to that. Consolidated Biscuit does hold title to the building. However, Tecumseh Products does maintain a presence in that building. They do lease space from CBC, and as far as we know, that will continue for the foreseeable future. So that's a good thing. The other question that often comes up with these kind of projects is, did CBC receive any tax breaks? The answer to that is yes, they did. However, and very sizable tax breaks. They did receive a approval back in, hard to believe this, September of 2008, received a mega tax credit from the state of Michigan for up to $5.2 million over a 10-year period. City of Tecumseh pledged tax incentives as well as our Brownfield Authority. So a lot of tax incentives were pledged. However, the good news is that Michigan's tax incentives are structured so that if you don't perform, you don't get the credit. So in this case, there's no money been transacted through the tax incentives at this point in time. It's not to say that if a project doesn't come back here, which we know it will at one time, that those incentives could be reevaluated. So we're optimistic about that. The other question is, does Mr. Appold have other business that he'll bring here? He is involved in other business transactions, but we have nothing to report at this point in time. We hope in the next few months that we will be able to report more as to what our plans are to help him market this building. And obviously, there is great incentives for him to do so, since he owns the building and he's paying the holding cost on it. Did the city do everything it could for this company and try to save the project? The simple answer is absolutely yes. I've already talked about the incentives. If you go and look at what, especially the state incentive that was provided to Consolidated Biscuit, if you compare those to what is offered today, that incentive, which was up to $5.2 million over a 10-year period, is not offered today. So that was a huge tax incentive. I think between our partnership with the state of Michigan, the LEDC, South Central Michigan Works, and all those folks, I think we gave them the best shot we could. But I think what happened here is something that we just couldn't control, and that's an offer to buy the business. I think that is probably bigger than anything that we could ever overcome, although we tried. I will say this, we did try to do that. Lastly, question that may come up is, how does this affect the city's budget? The good news is that it doesn't, because we never planned on new tax revenue as a result of this project. So it would require an adjustment on our part to adjust the city's budget.
Did contamination have anything to do with the decision not to take the Tecumseh property?
No, not that we're aware of, because what you're referring to is the plume. That's really the responsibility of Tecumseh Products. And Tecumseh Products has been just phenomenal in this endeavor, and really took on a big risk by opening their doors to this company. Didn't have to do that. We spoke very highly of them before, and we will again today, but I doubt whether that played any role in this whatsoever, because they fully knew what the environmental risk was the day that they purchased this building. And that hasn't changed.
How is the cleanup? Is there cleanup going on?
When you talk about cleanup, there's really two facets of cleanup. One, we're not aware of anything that is being cleaned up at this point in time by Tecumseh Products. There has been notices that have been sent out about the off-site migration, but as far as we know, there is no cleanup being undertaken or required at this point in time. Now, as far as in the building, our Brownfield Authority did approve up to $600,000 worth of remedial work, including asbestos abatement, lead abatement for Consolidated Biscuit. That was approved. That never started. And hence, it won't at this point in time. Hopefully, when we have another user, that we can revisit that issue. And it may be different for a different kind of company. That happened to be cookies, so there was a different level of use of that building. And a different company, they may not need to remove the asbestos or lead. It just depends at this point in time. But I think it's safe to say our Brownfield Authority would be prepared to respond to that, just like they did with Consolidated Biscuit. So I guess the bottom line is we want everybody to know, including the residents of the city, that even though this is going to hit them hard when they read about this hit us hard several weeks ago. I don't want to say we're over it, because we're not over it, but we're ready to work on this again, and we're very optimistic that if we can make this happen once, we can make it happen the second time, and we're prepared to work hard enough to do that. So we want them to be optimistic but patient.